They watched the cabin burn, their laughter echoing ugly and loud against the crackling roar of the flames. 5 riders silhouetted against the inferno they'd set, smug in their casual cruelty. They thought they were just burning out another helpless settler woman, teaching the prairie a lesson. They were dead wrong, because the woman escaping into the night, smoke-stained and simmering with a cold fury, wasn't just Eliza Callahan, the quiet homesteader with a limp. She was a ghost they'd foolishly awakened, a name whispered in fear across the territories, a legend they thought long buried, the Phantom Mare. And they had just signed their own death warrants in flickering firelight, before the fire, before Jed Stone's mocking sneer. Eliza Callahan, Liza, she insisted on being called, lived a life deliberately small, tucked away on the harsh fringe of Redemption Creek territory. Her cabin stood defiant against the wind and emptiness, built with logs she'd likely hauled herself, chinked tight against the dust. Beside it, a patch of earth fought to yield vegetables under her stubborn care. It was remote, intentionally so, nestled in a draw that offered quiet and concealment. Her days were marked by the rhythm of sunup and sundown, tending the garden, checking snares with a quiet efficiency, mending worn clothes, the rhythmic thud of her axe splitting wood. Simple labor, honest labor, the kind meant to bury a past written in gunpowder and blood. Trips into Redemption Creek were rare, purely for necessity. The town itself clung to life. Henderson's General Store, a saloon breathing whiskey fumes onto the dusty street, a sheriff's office needing paint, the skeletal frame of an unfinished church whispering of abandoned hope. In town, Liza was a study in reserve, a polite nod, her needs stated plainly to Henderson, payment offered, then gone. People saw the quiet woman, maybe 35, with that slight, persistent limp favoring her left leg. An old injury, most assumed, part of the frontier's toll. They didn't see the result of a bullet meant to end the Phantom Mare years ago. An escape that cost her dearly, but forged her caution in iron. Sheriff Brody, a man whose face bore the map of too much territory and too little help, saw her as another solitary soul battling the odds. He'd offer a gruff, "Ma'am," tip his hat, but respected the invisible wall she kept around herself. Histories out here were often best left undisturbed, but Liza's quietude wasn't passivity. It was a fortress built of control. Standing at Henderson's counter, her clear gray eyes absorbed everything. The nervous shift of a stranger's weight, the telltale bulge under a coat, the way a horse favored a leg outside the saloon. Her hearing, preternaturally sharp, caught the cadence of voices, the clink of spurs, the subtle scrape of a boot on the boardwalk. Information gathered, assessed, filed away with the chilling precision of a predator. Even in the solitude of her cabin, peace was a fragile, guarded thing. Beneath her simple cot rested a long, locked wooden chest, not for linens, but for relics of a life supposedly extinguished. Sometimes, the wind whistling through the draw sounded too much like pursuit, and her hand would clench, her breath catching. The yearning for this quiet life was a physical ache, a desperate hope. But the skills, the instincts, they remained, coiled and waiting, dangerous even in sleep. She practiced, not merely hunting rabbits. Far out, where canyon walls swallowed the sound, she'd draw from that locked chest. Not the plain rifle by the door. Another one, custom-made, perfectly balanced. Stones on ledges, a fleeting shadow, impossibly distant targets. The recoil was an unwelcome memory against her shoulder, the crack-thwack of a perfect shot a language her muscles refused to forget. The limp was the price. The accuracy was the consequence. She was building a life, painstakingly. Anonymity was the foundation, but the West had a long memory and a cruel appetite. She felt the change coming, like a shift in the wind direction, cold and sharp. She just didn't know it would arrive laughing, carrying torches, led by a man named Jedediah Stone. Before the fire, before Jed Stone's mocking sneer. Eliza Callahan, Liza, she insisted on being called, lived a life deliberately small, tucked away on the harsh fringe of Redemption Creek territory. Her cabin stood defiant against the wind and emptiness, built with logs she'd likely hauled herself, chinked tight against the dust. Beside it, a patch of earth fought to yield vegetables under her stubborn care. It was remote, intentionally so, nestled in a draw that offered quiet and concealment. Her days were marked by the rhythm of sunup and sundown, tending the garden, checking snares with a quiet efficiency, mending worn clothes, the rhythmic thud of her axe splitting wood. Simple labor, honest labor, the kind meant to bury a past written in gunpowder and blood. Trips into Redemption Creek were rare, purely for necessity. The town itself clung to life. Henderson's General Store, a saloon breathing whiskey fumes onto the dusty street, a sheriff's office needing paint, the skeletal frame of an unfinished church whispering of abandoned hope. In town, Liza was a study in reserve, a polite nod, her need stated plainly to Henderson. Payment offered, then gone. People saw the quiet woman, maybe 35, with that slight, persistent limp favoring her left leg. An old injury, most assumed, part of the frontier's toll. They didn't see the result of a bullet meant to end the Phantom mare years ago. An escape that cost her dearly, but forged her caution in iron. Sheriff Brody, a man whose face bore the map of too much territory and too little help, saw her as another solitary soul battling the odds. He'd offer a gruff, "Ma'am," tip his hat, but respected the invisible wall she kept around herself. Histories out here were often best left undisturbed. But Liza's quietude wasn't passivity. It was a fortress built of control. Standing at Henderson's counter, her clear gray eyes absorbed everything. The nervous shift of a stranger's weight, the telltale bulge under a coat, the way a horse favored a leg outside the saloon. Her hearing, preternaturally sharp, caught the cadence of voices, the clink of spurs, the subtle scrape of a boot on the boardwalk. Information gathered, assessed, filed away with the chilling precision of a predator. Even in the solitude of her cabin, peace was a fragile, guarded thing. Beneath her simple cot rested a long, locked wooden chest, not for linens, but for relics of a life supposedly extinguished. Sometimes, the wind whistling through the draw sounded too much like pursuit, and her hand would clench, her breath catching. The yearning for this quiet life was a physical ache, a desperate hope. But the skills, the instincts, they remained, coiled and waiting, dangerous even in sleep. She practiced, not merely hunting rabbits. Far out, where canyon walls swallowed the sound, she'd draw from that locked chest. Not the plain rifle by the door. Another one, custom-made, perfectly balanced. Stones on ledges, a fleeting shadow, impossibly distant targets. The recoil was an unwelcome memory against her shoulder. The crack-thwack of a perfect shot, a language her muscles refused to forget. The limp was the price. The accuracy was the consequence. She was building a life, painstakingly. Anonymity was the foundation. But the West had a long memory and a cruel appetite. She felt the change coming, like a shift in the wind direction, cold and sharp. She just didn't know it would arrive laughing, carrying torches, led by a man named Jedediah Stone. The dust cloud announcing them was thick and brown, rising against the brassy afternoon sky. Jedediah Stone and his 7 men rode into Redemption Creek, not seeking respite, but radiating menace. They moved like locusts ready to strip the land bare. Hard men, trail filth thick on their clothes, eyes narrowed against the sun and suspicion. Their horses looked ridden hard and put away mean, brands hinting at distant, troubled origins. They carried themselves with the swagger of men who took what they wanted and answered to no one. Stone led them, unmistakable astride his black stallion. The scar dragging down his cheek twisted his mouth into a perpetual sneer. Dusty black coat, stained vest, a heavy Colt peacemaker riding low on his hip. His pale eyes swept the street, cataloging weakness, opportunity, and anything worth breaking. They hauled up before the saloon, shoving through the batwing doors as if they owned the place. A sudden quiet fell over the dusty street. Faces vanished from windows. Henderson paused mid-sweep outside his store. Sheriff Brody appeared, his hand instinctively going to his own gun belt, his expression tightening. He knew this brand of trouble, and he knew he was badly outnumbered. Liza was just leaving Henderson's, a sack of precious flour over her shoulder. She'd meant to slip away unnoticed, but Stone and two others emerged from the saloon, whiskey bottles already in hand, blocking her path. Stone's gaze locked onto her. It traveled down, noting the plain dress, the worn boots, the slight hitch in her step. His scarred lip curled into a slow, deliberate, mocking grin. Well now, his voice, like boots crunching on gravel, cut through the tense air. Looky here. A little prairie flower trying to bloom in all this dust. A greasy chuckle from one of his men. Liza froze, outwardly calm, ice water flooding her veins. She catalogued them, Stone, the clear threat, radiating bored cruelty. The other two, followers, eyes darting nervously, dangerous only through proximity to him. Weapons obvious. Their stances reeked of arrogance. They saw only a lone, limping woman. "Excuse me," Liza said, her voice quiet but firm. She tried to step past. Stone shifted, a deliberate obstruction. He tilted his whiskey bottle back, then waved it dismissively towards her flour sack. "Hard life out here, ain't it? Scratching for pennies." His eyes deliberately dropped to her leg, especially for a cripple. The word, spat out like poison, hung heavy. Liza felt the old ice spread, the deeply buried instinct to react, violently, decisively, surging against years of hard-won control. Her eyes met Stone's for a heartbeat, and held, not with fear, with a flat, cold appraisal that unsettled him for a fraction of a second, though he couldn't have said why. She remained silent, her stillness a stark contrast to his swagger. Sheriff Brody arrived then, a welcome interruption, though his own tension was palpable. "Problem here, ma'am?" He faced Stone. "You fellas, I mean, to stay long?" Stone shifted his sneer to the sheriff. "Might. Town looks like it could use some excitement." He winked at his men, then gave Liza a final, dismissive glance, as if swatting away a fly. He brushed past her, deliberately jarring her shoulder. The flour sack wobbled. She recovered with a swiftness that belied the limp, her hand instinctively brushing the hidden knife at her belt. Stone and his men laughed, swaggering back into the saloon. Liza watched them go, her face an unreadable mask. "Best head on home, ma'am," Brody advised, his voice low and weary. "Trouble's come to roost, I reckon." Liza nodded, turning towards her mare. The flour sack felt like lead. The thin veneer of peace she'd cultivated felt like it was about to crack wide open. She rode out of town without looking back, but the image of Stone's sneering face was burned into her mind. This wasn't a random encounter. It was a spark landing in dry tinder. And Jedediah Stone looked like the kind of man who enjoyed watching things burn. They didn't leave. Stone's gang made camp down by the creek, a visible scar on the landscape just beyond town limits. Their presence became a low-grade fever infecting Redemption Creek. Whispers turned to fearful murmurs. A merchant heading east robbed clean. Old Man Hemlock's fences cut, cattle vanished, tracks leading straight back to the cottonwoods. Henderson's dog yelped one night, a bullet grazing its ear, a message sent for sheer meanness. Fear began to stink up the air like bad whiskey. Doors bolted earlier. Streets emptied faster after sundown. Brody rode out once, two nervous deputies, flanking him. Stone met them with mocking courtesy, surrounded by his lounging, heavily armed men. He denied everything, offered Brody a drink, inquired about the town's prosperity with veiled sarcasm. Brody returned empty-handed, frustration etched deeper into his face. He was outmatched. Liza heard it all on her rare trips for salt and coffee. She saw the fear-tightening faces. Her isolation felt less like sanctuary now, more like a target painted on her back. But she wasn't idle. Her quietness became a hunter's blind. From the ridge behind her cabin, a small, Hidden spyglass brought Stone's camp into sharp focus. She learned their rhythms. Who stood guard when often poorly? How many rode out? Who seemed Stone's right hand? A burly brute named Cale. How much whiskey they consumed? She mapped their patrols, noted vulnerabilities, escape routes, water sources. Knowledge was ammunition. Her own preparations became less about homesteading, more about defense. Iron brackets reinforced the door bar. Thick bolts secured the shutters from within. The old hunting rifle by the door was kept meticulously clean, though she knew its effective range was pitifully short compared to what lay hidden. Her trips into the desolate canyons intensified. Not just practice anymore. It was reawakening. The custom rifle felt like an extension of her soul. Targets weren't just stones now. They were imagined threats. A glint of metal and shadow, a rider cresting a ridge. The fluid, deadly motion of draw, aim, fire, reload flowed back like muscle memory, pushing aside the homesteader, resurrecting the mare. The internal war escalated. Run. Disappear again. Find another nowhere place to hide. The thought was exhausting and infuriating. Why should she run? She'd earned this small patch of earth. But the rising tide of lethal instinct terrified her almost as much as Stone did. Peace felt like a distant dream. One evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in bruised purples and reds, she saw two of Stone's men ride deliberately through her struggling corn patch. They paused by her small corral, eyeing her buckskin mare speculatively. One laughed, made a dismissive gesture, testing the waters, seeing if the lone woman would show fight. Liza watched from the cabin window, swallowed by shadow. Her hands clenched, knuckles white. The cold anger spiked. But she stayed hidden. Didn't give them the reaction they wanted. Not yet. They rode off, leaving trampled stalks and violation hanging in the air. Liza slid the bolts home on her shutters that night, the sound unervingly loud in the stillness. The pretense of peace was gone. Now only vigilance remained, and the chilling certainty that men like Stone only pushed until something pushed back. Hard. The question wasn't if. It was when. It came at dusk, not with a warning shot, but with the gut-wrenching sound of her cabin door splintering inwards, followed by coarse laughter that scraped her nerves raw. Liza was returning from checking snares, a lean rabbit swinging from her hand, when the sounds hit her. Instinct, sharp and immediate, overruled thought. She didn't run towards the cabin. She veered sideways, melting into the jagged rocks and deepening twilight shadows of the draw. Her limp vanished, replaced by the silent, fluid movement of a predator avoiding a trap. Peeking around a boulder, heart hammering against her ribs, she saw them. Stone, Cale, two others. They'd breached her sanctuary. One man, Billy, was inside, carelessly tossing her meager belongings out into the dirt. Another held the horses. Cale leaned against the ruined doorframe, arms crossed, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. Stone surveyed the scene, rolling a cigarette with detached satisfaction, the architect of petty destruction. "Ain't much here, boss," Billy called out, his voice laced with contempt. Stone lit his cigarette, inhaling deeply. "Ain't about the loot, Billy boy. It's the principle. Land ain't for scared rabbits and lame women. It's for takers." He exhaled smoke, his eyes scanning the interior. Besides, she annoyed me. Too quiet, like she was hiding something. Ice flooded Liza's veins. Helpless, he had no concept. But trapped out here, armed only with a skinning knife against their rifles and Colts, attacking was suicide. She remained unseen, mind racing, odds, escape routes, weaknesses. Then Billy emerged, hefting the locked wooden chest. "Found this under the cot, boss. Feels heavy." Stone's interest sharpened. The lazy cruelty in his eyes hardened into avarice. "Get it open. Maybe the little bird had a nest egg." Billy dumped the chest, drew his pistol, and fired at the lock. The shot cracked, echoing sharply. Wood splintered, but the lock held. He cursed, fired again. The mechanism shattered. He pried the lid open. Liza held her breath. There they lay, nestled in worn oilcloth, gleaming dully in the fading light. The long rifle, deadly elegance in blued steel and worn walnut. The matched Colt navies, grips customized. The heavy ammunition belts. And tucked away, the dark bandana. Tools of a dead legend. The men stared, confused. "What the?" Billy muttered. Cale peered closer. "That ain't farmer gear. That's professional iron." Stone straightened, the sneer replaced by dawning suspicion, a flicker of unease in his pale eyes. He knelt, picked up one of the Colts, its weight familiar deadly. His gaze swept the darkening canyons. "Where is she?" he snapped, the command sharp. "Find her." Two men fanned out, calling mockingly. "Come out, little bird. We got your toys." Liza knew her time was up. Stone was connecting the dots. But as she plotted her escape into the deeper canyons, a rough hand seized her arm from behind. The fourth man, moving stealthily, had circled around. "Got her, boss," he crowed, shoving her forward into the clearing. She stumbled, catching her balance, finding herself face to face with Stone. His eyes locked onto hers, suspicion hardening into certainty. He saw past the limp now, saw the steel beneath the quiet facade. "Well, well." Stone purred, rising, her custom Colt dangling from his fingers. "The prairie flower got thorns." He nodded at the chest. "Care to explain these, sweetheart?" Liza met his gaze, silent, her mind a whirlwind of impossible calculations. For armed men. One knife. Her captor twisted her arm painfully. "Answer him." Stone stepped close, his whiskey breath hot on her face. "Thought you could hide. Play homesteader." His gaze flickered towards the dim interior of the cabin. "We don't like secrets." He nodded curtly to Cale. "Remind her how things work out here. Then burn it. All of it." Cale grinned, advancing. Liza exploded. She stomped back hard on her captor's instep, simultaneously twisting and lunging toward Stone. She snatched the cigarette from his lips, grinding the burning tip into the back of the hand holding her Colt. Stone bellowed in pain, dropping the revolver. Liza ducked, drawing her skinning knife in one fluid motion, slashing upwards at the man who'd held her. He staggered back, clutching a bleeding arm. Chaos. Billy raised his rifle. Liza dove behind the relative safety of the chest as a shot slammed into the wood near her head. Cale fired wildly. The fourth man charged. No winning this fight. Only escape. Stone was momentarily disabled. Billy fumbling to reload. Cale panicked. The injured man reeling. Seeing her chance, Liza burst from cover, sprinting not away, but into the cabin through the shattered doorway. Flames were already licking the walls inside, smoke stinging her eyes. Stone roared behind her. "Don't let her burn. I want her alive." But Cale, perhaps eager to end it, hurled his whiskey flask inside. It shattered, spreading burning liquid. Flames roared up, sealing the doorway in a wall of fire. Liza scrambled through the choking smoke towards a small, bolted rear window. Her lungs burned. Tears streamed. The bolt, stiff but familiar, slid back under her desperate fingers. She threw open the shutters and tumbled out into the night, landing hard. She didn't look back. Coughing, bruised, bleeding from a graze, clothes reeking of smoke, she ran into the concealing darkness of the canyons as the inferno consumed her borrowed life. Stone's enraged shouts faded behind her. They thought they'd won. Thought they'd erased Eliza Callahan. They had only stripped away the disguise. Lying in the dirt near the pyre of her hopes were the tools of the phantom mare. And rising from those ashes, fueled by fire and a fury colder than the grave, the legend was reborn. The hunt had begun. She didn't run blindly. Deeper into the canyons, she found water, cleaned her wounds, tore strips from her ruined clothes for bandages. The smell of smoke clung to her like a shroud, the image of her burning home seared behind her eyes. Grief was a fire banked low, cold purpose burned hotter now. They took her peace, tried to take her life. Now they'd pay. Under a sliver moon, She moved like smoke back towards the smoldering ruins. Stone's gang was gone, confident their work was done. The fire had died to embers, illuminating the violation. And there, miraculously spared the worst, lay the open chest. Her breath hitched. Kneeling, she lifted out the instruments of her past. The long rifle settled into her grip, a familiar, deadly weight. The twin Colts slid into worn holsters on the gun belt she fastened around her waist. Ammunition pouches clicked into place. Lastly, the dark bandana. Tied high, it hid her face, leaving only the chilling intensity of her eyes. A necessary shadow. She stripped off the remnants of her homesteader life, donning the dark, practical clothing from the chest's hidden compartment. Tough trousers, dark shirt, leather vest. Shedding Eliza Callahan, embracing the mare. The limp felt different now, integrated into a deadly economy of motion her body instinctively remembered. She salvaged only one thing from the ashes, a small, scorched tin box containing a faded photograph. A man, a younger Liza, smiling. A ghost of a life before. Everything else was consumed. Only vengeance remained. She didn't go towards town. She went toward Stone's camp, using the darkness and terrain she knew intimately. She arrived before dawn, a phantom on the ridge overlooking the creek. For men remained, lax around a dying fire, passing a bottle. Stone, Cale, and the main group were gone elsewhere. Liza steadied the long rifle on a rock. Breathed out. The world narrowed to the foresight and the back of the man laughing loudest, Billy, who'd found the chest. The rifle's report was a sharp crack, instantly swallowed by the vastness. Billy jerked, a dark bloom spreading on his shirt, and collapsed soundlessly. Panic erupted below. Wild shots flared into the darkness. Liza was already gone, melting back into the rocks, leaving behind only death and dawning terror. 2 days later, 2 more of Stone's riders, out checking stolen livestock, rode confidently under the unforgiving sun. They never saw the watcher high on a distant mesa. The first shot dropped one man cleanly from his saddle. The second man spun his horse, eyes wide with disbelief, searching for the invisible shooter. The second shot found him before he could raise his own weapon. More food for the buzzards. Fear, cold and sharp, began to spread. Stone's men weren't dying in fights. They were being executed. Impossible shots, no trace of the killer. They rode in groups now, jumpy, arrogance curdling into paranoia. The whispers reached Redemption Creek, carried by frightened outlaws and worried travelers. Then the name surfaced, dredged up from fearful memory, the phantom mare. Sheriff Brody heard it, found the bodies, noted the chilling precision. The legend he dismissed as campfire tales suddenly felt horribly plausible. Stone heard it too, laughed it off initially. But as his men vanished, doubt became a maggot gnawing at his confidence. He remembered the chest, the weapons, the woman's eyes before the fire. Could she be the mare? Preposterous. Yet, he pushed the thought away, clinging to denial even as fear tightened its grip. He became jumpy, keeping Cale and his 2 remaining men close. Sleep offered no refuge. His hand never strayed far from his gun. The predator had become the prey, stalked by an unseen, unbelievable foe. Liza watched his unraveling from the shadows. Let the fear fester. Let the legend work its poison. Stone wouldn't run. His pride was too vast, his cruelty too ingrained. He demanded a confrontation. She gave him one. She rode back to the blackened ruin of her cabin. And there, placed deliberately on the charred threshold, she left one of her custom-gripped Colt Navies, an invitation written in steel, a challenge his rage couldn't refuse. He would come, and the mare would be waiting. The Colt Navy lying on the scorched timbers was like a slap in the face. Stone saw it glinting in the dawn light and felt a surge of boiling rage mixed with the icy sweat of fear. It was hers, the woman from the fire. The impossible truth hit him like a physical blow. She's alive, Cale whispered, his voice strained, eyes fixed on the revolver. The last 2 men shuffled nervously, the campfire tales suddenly becoming stark, Terrifying reality. Quiet. Stone snapped, though his own voice cracked. He snatched up the Colt, the unique grip confirming it. That homesteader bitch. It all made sense now. The weapons, the cold eyes, the impossible shots. Think she can spook us? Play ghost games. Fury drowned the fear. We finish this. Right here. He swept his gaze across the desolate scene. The burnt-out shell of the cabin, the fire-hardened ground, the watchful canyons looming beyond. She was out there. Somewhere. Watching. Fan out. He ordered his 3 remaining men. Circle wide. Flush the bitch out. I want her scalp. His men exchanged terrified glances but obeyed, moving cautiously towards the edges of the draw, rifles scanning the rocks and shadows. They knew this wasn't some frightened farmer. They were hunting. Stone took cover behind the blackened chimney stack, his own rifle ready. The silence was heavy, broken only by the nervous crunch of boots and the distant cry of a hawk. Liza watched from a high crevice, the dark bandana masking her face, only her narrowed eyes visible. Her long rifle rested steady. Stone's arrogance was predictable. Sending his men out was playing right into her hands. Separated, they were vulnerable. She waited. Let the silence stretch their nerves taut. Let them move further apart. One man, younger, edged near a patch of stubborn scrub oak. A small stone skittered down the slope from within the leaves, a deliberate distraction. The man jumped, whirling towards a sound. Crack! Liza's rifle spoke. The man cried out, staggering, clutching a suddenly bloody shoulder. Not a killing shot. A message. There! Cale yelled, firing blindly into the scrub. The wounded man collapsed, moaning. Stone cursed, firing towards the ridge Liza had occupied. Bullets screaming off rock, far below her new position. Hold position, damn you. But another man, thoroughly spooked, broke ranks, scrambling backwards towards a cluster of boulders. He never saw the shadow detach itself from the rocks behind him. Liza had moved, anticipating their panic. Now closer, she rose slightly, Colt Navy barking once, loud in the confined space. The man spun, shock widening his eyes, and fell face first into the dust. Dead instantly. 2 down. Cale and Stone remained. The wounded man sobbed near the chimney. Cale broke, sprinting toward Stone in raw terror. Boss, it's her. She's picking us off. Get down. Stone roared, yanking Cale behind the chimney as another rifle shot slammed into the bricks where Cale had just been. Liza fired again, chipping Stone near Stone's head, pinning them. Trapped. Humiliated. Cale trembled beside him. Stone risked a look. Where was she? Phantom mare. The voice echoed, cold and clear, seeming to come from everywhere at once. You wanted a reckoning, Jedediah Stone. You found it. Stone flinched. He fired wildly toward the voice. Show yourself. I did. The voice replied, closer now. Liza was moving, always moving. You just didn't want to see. Another shot kicked up dust near the wounded man, silencing his moans with sheer terror. Cale whimpered, Let's run for it, boss. Run where? Stone hissed. She'll shoot us down like dogs. He saw a flicker high on the western ridge. Aimed. Fired. Silence. Had he hit her? The silence stretched, thick with dread. Then, impossibly, Liza stepped out from the ruins of the cabin itself, not 50 yards away. Bandana hiding her face. One Colt held loosely, the other holstered. Calm. Deadly. Stone gaped. Exposed. Right there. Just you and me, Stone. Liza stated, her voice flat. Tell Cale to drop his guns. He can walk away. Cale looked from Liza's unwavering stance to Stone's murderous glare. Stone snarled. Stay put, Cale. We take her. Liza raised her Colt slightly. Last chance. With a strangled cry, Cale dropped his weapons, hands shooting up, and scrambled away towards the horses, not daring to look back. Now it was just Stone, the wounded man nearby, and the embodiment of vengeance, standing in the ashes of the life he destroyed. You, Stone breathed. You are the phantom mare. A slight nod. You woke me. Burned my home. Liza took a step closer. Big mistake. Stone forced a harsh laugh. One woman. He brought his rifle up. Liza's draw was a blur. Her Colt spat flame before Stone's rifle was level. The bullet hit the rifle stock, shattering wood, stinging Stone's hands. He cried out, dropping the useless weapon. He clawed for his own pistol. Liza fired again. The shot tore through his leg, the same leg he'd used to kick down her door. He collapsed, howling. Liza advanced slowly, reloading with chilling efficiency. She stopped, looking down at him. Pain and disbelief warred on his face. Why, he gasped. Just for a damn cabin? Liza pulled the bandana down slightly. Let him see the ice in her eyes. You didn't just burn things, Stone. You enjoyed it. You broke people because you could. She gestured at the wounded man. Some accounts have to be settled. She leveled the Colt. This is mine. Hoofbeats pounded. Sheriff Brody, Henderson, and 2 others rode into the clearing, alerted by Cale. They stared, stunned by the scene. Dead outlaws, Stone on the ground, and Liza Callahan, Colt steady, radiating lethal authority. Sheriff, Stone croaked. Arrest her. She's the mare. She killed them. Brody looked from Stone's agony to Liza's stillness. He saw the ruins, remembered the fear Stone had sown. He looked at the dead men. Frontier justice wasn't clean. Liza slowly lowered her Colt, meeting Brody's gaze. An unspoken understanding passed between them. Sheriff Brody dismounted, his gaze fixed on Liza for a long moment before shifting to Stone. Henderson and the others watched in silent awe. The quiet woman was a legend made flesh. She speaks true, Sheriff, Liza said calmly. They attacked me. I defended myself. No tremor in her voice. Just fact. Brody checked the wounded outlaw, then Stone's leg. Looks like you reaped what you sowed, Stone, he said, his voice rough. He didn't spare the dead men a glance. But killing's still killing. I know, Liza replied, finally holstering her Colt. I'll come. Brody sighed, looking from the ruins to Liza. He thought of the town's terror, his own helplessness. Locking her up felt wrong. Futile, even. The phantom mare, he mused softly. Hunted men like Stone. Men who needed hunting. He met Stone's desperate eyes. Men like you. He turned back to Liza. What happened here? Looks like self-defense to me. Stone and his crew attacked you. Burned your home. You fought back. He paused. The others, well, sometimes the prairie dispenses its own justice. No witnesses, I see. He glanced meaningfully at Henderson and the others, who nodded quickly. Stone sputtered protests, but Brody ignored him. Patch these 2 up, he ordered his men, gesturing to Stone and the shoulder-shot outlaw. They'll face trial for what they did do. Liza watched, the tension slowly leaving her frame. Not forgiveness, just the grim pragmatism of the West. She walked back to the ruins, retrieved her second Colt, then knelt, sifting through the ashes until she found the small, scorched tin box. Inside, the faded photograph lay unharmed. Hope from another lifetime. It was all she took. Mounting her buckskin mare, she settled the long rifle across her lap. Where now? Brody asked. Liza looked towards the vast horizon. Somewhere quiet, she murmured, if there is such a place. Her gaze swept over the townspeople. Redemption Creek got its piece back today. Maybe it can hold on to it. Henderson stepped forward. We owe you, ma'am. A faint, weary smile touched Liza's lips. Just balancing the books. She nodded a final farewell to Brody. Then, turning her back on the ashes, the bodies, and the legend she had briefly resurrected, Liza Callahan, the phantom mare, rode west into the setting sun, disappearing once more into the dusty anonymity of the untamed frontier, leaving Redemption Creek changed forever by the quiet woman who was anything but